All around the world, people report seeing unidentified flying objects appearing out of nowhere.
All of a sudden, this enormous craft just came cruising silently over us.
Mysterious objects with pulsating lights.
The object had come out from the forest and sort of hovered, glowing and pulsing.
Strange crafts moving at extraordinary speeds.
The red light suddenly made a longitudinal move at a very high rate of speed. I really didn't know what we were dealing with.
Some believe we are not alone.
I couldn't take my eyes off of these two orbs. It felt like something was watching me.
Skeptics say there's no evidence of alien life visiting Earth.
Okay, it's a UFO. It doesn't mean it's an extraterrestrial craft.
But for believers, the search continues.
We've got an object, 270 north.
Two of them in the frame at once. Holy sh**.
There are people watching the skies, searching for UFOs.
Oh, something just went by.
Fast. The project that I've engaged in is to find really high-quality telescopes and optics, really high-quality cameras.
Doug Trumbull is a man on a mission.
Calibrating all axes.
I've actually commissioned the construction of this pan-tilt rig, which is completely automated and very precise. It's as good as NASA has for looking at space shuttle launches.
He's hunting for signs of extraterrestrial life.
I just have a very personal passion about the universe. I think it's a spectacular place, and we're seeing now that there are hundreds of billions of galaxies out there. It seems to me that the likelihood of life in the universe is really high, and we just need to find out what's going on out there.
He wants to get the shot that proves there's alien life out there.
Okay, now it's back.
Some say we already have the proof. In Brazil, in Mexico, and in the Middle East. There are sightings across the world.
This looks like it's clear after the coast. It's right on the horizon.
And with the dawn of modern technology, people are now able to capture their UFO encounters on video.
March 13th, 1997 was a beautiful, quiet evening. My husband and I were in bed reading. One wall of our bedroom is a window, so whatever pops up out there, we see. And both my husband and I saw it simultaneously through our sliding glass window. And I have to say that when these orbs, which are huge, pop up, you notice them.
Dr. Lynn Kitai witnessed what would become known as the Phoenix Lights.
The Phoenix Lights was a spectacular series of UFO sightings.
It's one of the most well-documented UFO sightings ever. According to Nick Pope, a former British Defense Ministry UFO investigator, there were two different sightings.
The first block of sightings took place at around about 8 o'clock in the evening and involved the apparent sighting of a large delta-shaped object. People were seeing lights in a V-shaped formation.
Over a number of hours, people as far as 500 kilometers away from each other described seeing a formation of lights roughly 1.5 kilometers wide moving south. One of those people is then governor of the state of Arizona, Fife Symington.
There were these reports coming in about lights over Phoenix, these sightings, and it was about around 8 o'clock at night.
Symington originally dismisses claims that the lights could be a UFO. But years later, he publicly reveals that he too was baffled by the reports and actually went out that night to get a closer look.
All of a sudden, I looked up and this enormous craft just came sort of cruising silently over us. It's like an apparition. It was really quite something. I've never seen anything like it, ever. It just took your breath away. I mean, you see something like that and you know you're dealing with something that is completely out of the ordinary and foreign. I was in awe.
The media reports that hundreds, perhaps thousands of people witnessed the event.
At around 10 o'clock, there was another wave of UFO sightings, and these seemed to involve more individual lights.
Like many Phoenix residents, Dr. Lynn Kitai is captivated by the series of unusual lights.
I jumped up, put on my robe, grabbed my camera, tried to get out on the balcony and focus the camera. By the time I looked up, the 6 had turned into 3. It almost looked like they were 3 endpoints of a V or a triangle, and I started videotaping immediately.
While witness reports of the formation and number of lights vary, Kitai captures 18 seconds of the lights on videotape.
These lights were either attached to something or were actually individual orbs, giant balls of light that had a field in between, a force field in between, keeping them in rock-solid formation. That was which was so unusual. It was uncanny. I immediately stepped out on the balcony and noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. I couldn't take my eyes off these 2 orbs, and as intently as I was watching these orbs, it felt like something was watching me.
I was in awe, and I was surprised. I felt sort of very insignificant, and so I knew I was in the presence of something very unusual. There was a lot of hysteria about it. Really, it was quite something.
The public wants answers, and authorities investigate.
The military announced that they found a solution, that there was a military exercise on the night in question, and flares were dropped from A-10 aircraft, and that's what people saw.
But not everyone buys the military's response.
They said it was the A-10s out of Luke Air Force Base.
Most eyewitnesses claim the lights moved silently.
There was no way it was A-10s. The A-10 was a noisy tank-killing aircraft. The Warthog is its name.
Your implant cleared hot.
Critics say the planes weren't close enough to be heard. UFO believers argue that sound or no sound, flares can't explain the delta-shaped object that many witnesses described.
They're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation for more than a couple of seconds traverse the entire state in a mile-wide, equidistant, rock-solid V formation for hours?
Unidentified flying objects is kind of a grab bag of all kinds of different things that people see in the sky.
Astrophysicist Sten Odenwald says without sophisticated equipment, it's incredibly difficult to identify objects in the night sky.
Do you really know all the things that the military is putting into the sky? Do you really understand astronomy well enough that you can recognize whether it's a planet or a flying saucer? And that's where we get into the issue of defining what the phenomenon is.
Skeptics like science writer Dr. Michael Shermer say the military's explanation for the Phoenix lights is clear and simple.
There were 2 incidences that were about 45 minutes to an hour apart. The first one were some fighter jets. The second one were the flares. So the first one got reported, then the 2 got conflated.
But others remain unconvinced.
I don't think any of the initial sightings that occurred closer to 8 o'clock can be explained as military flares.
To this day, nobody's been given a satisfactory explanation.
Skeptics argue that photographic evidence doesn't provide real proof.
We get dozens every year of UFO photographs to look at, and they're always blurry, blurry photographs, grainy videos, shadows, lights, things that could be something else. It's never really definitive, and that's the problem. That evidence is always so thin, it's just not quite there.
To highlight how simple it can be to create fake UFO images, Sherma sets up a basic demonstration.
We staged a how to fake your own UFO. We just wanted to do it with simple toys. You don't know what you saw. The human perceptual system is not reliable. Oh, wow. That's why we try to do things like this, to show how easy it is to be fooled. The fake photos that we did have no help from digital computing. It's just all mechanical. You can do it very simply. It doesn't take any sophisticated equipment at all. If it can be done that simply, then we really can't trust people's UFO photographs. Even the experts can't tell. 1, 2, 3. Therein lies the problem. You can't rely on photographs.
On the east coast of the USA, UFO hunter Doug Trumbull is determined to capture real photographic evidence of UFOs.
I see a huge culture of fake UFO sightings, that people are really having fun with their handycams and their laptops and their compositing software. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of fake UFO sightings online that you can look at. They're interesting and kind of exciting and scary. Almost all of them are fake.
Trumbull is a Hollywood special effects expert, inventor, and filmmaker. He's spent his career creating illusions for some of the most famous science fiction movies in history.
I think I'm best known by the public for my visual effects work. 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner. Having been involved in a lot of movies about alien contact. And kind of wondering to myself, was there anything to it? Just kind of blew my mind to actually think about it from that standpoint and say, well, maybe this isn't fictional. Maybe this isn't mythology.
Now he wants to use his expertise to provide hard evidence about the existence of UFOs.
I decided, well, I actually have skills at photography and special technologies that are what I do my work with, that it seemed natural to explore the possibility of actually photographing UFOs in a way that would be scientifically valid.
Trumbull is developing a high-tech research project that he hopes will allow him to track and monitor possible UFO activity.
Has anybody really built sophisticated photogrammetric, spectrographic equipment to photograph UFOs or whatever is in the sky? And the answer was no.
By using the best cameras and lenses money can buy, Trumbull hopes to gather irrefutable evidence something is out there.
I wanted to get some scientifically valid data that really could be evaluated, that wouldn't be anecdotal or wouldn't be a story or wouldn't be somebody's, cell phone photograph.
Now he and his team are preparing to launch an expedition to try and answer one of the ultimate questions. Are we alone?
I just believe that it's worth pursuing. I think putting a little energy into that with the skills that I have, a project like this, is really worth our time because it's the biggest story that will ever be told. Human contact with other civilizations is the biggest story. And I'd like it to be told in my lifetime.
The story that motivates many to hunt for UFOs has its roots in the American Southwest, near a small New Mexico town called Roswell.
Roswell is, without doubt, the most famous UFO incident anywhere in the world.
The question is, how did an incident with no initial eyewitnesses become the world's most famous UFO story?
When I mention the word Roswell, they say, isn't that where the aliens landed?
Frank Kimbler is a geologist in the Roswell area.
Roswell's kind of a sleepy little cowboy town. Lots of farming and ranching. It's your typical all-American Western city.
Roswell is the scene of perhaps the world's most talked about UFO crash site. During the first week of July 1947, violent thunderstorms rip through the area. After the storm passes, a rancher out checking on his herd stumbles upon something very strange.
And what he found in this very location basically was what's been referred to as the debris field. It was metal fragments basically scattered over a large area, several hundred feet wide and 3/4 of a mile long. He thought it was maybe something that the military had landed out here. And so he grabbed up some of the debris, took it over to the Proctor ranch house, and he showed it to him. And they said, you know, that might be one of those UFOs that people have been talking about. Maybe you should go into town and show it to him.
At the time of the crash, Roswell was home to the only bombardment unit trained and ready for the atomic bomb mission.
Roswell is the Army Air Force base where the elite of the elite are based. It's the home to the only atomic bomb-capable squadron anywhere in the world. It is a site of such strategic importance, it's almost off the scale. And in the middle of all this area, something unknown comes down.
The US military reacts by sending investigators out to the crash site.
People had seen, they loaded up that material and took it all back into Roswell.
News of the strange crash is already starting to spread, so the US military issues a press release.
July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
They put the story out on the newswire. Within 24 hours, the US military comes forward again and says, wait a minute, we've made a terrible mistake. It wasn't a flying disc at all. It was just one of our weather balloons.
Even before the US military puts out the weather balloon news release, Air Force troops get busy cleaning up the debris field.
Out here on this spot, the military sealed off the roads coming in here. They had men out here on their hands and knees picking up every single little fragment of material that they could find, loading it on trucks and hauling it back to Roswell. And that whole process took several days. Right over here, this is building P3. This is where it all happened back in July 1947. The fragments of the alien spacecraft envisioned basically big B-29 bombers parked out here, them loading that material onto the plane and hauling it off to have it analyzed. All of that just for a weather balloon.
With the Roswell event dismissed as a weather balloon, the public's suspicion subsides, and the Roswell story seems to fade away.
The US statement, this was a weather balloon, was so effective, Roswell just drops out of history. The public show no more interest in it, the whole thing goes away. Roswell disappears from the history books for 30 years.
But in 1978, a startling new confession reignites the mystery.
Jesse Marcel, the military officer most closely involved with the recovery of the crashed UFO, spoke out, and he said, I was there. I was the person who recovered the wreckage, and it wasn't a weather balloon.
Marcel, a US Air Force intelligence officer, claims that the military had covered up the recovery of an alien spacecraft. Then, after years of silence, several new witnesses come forward. Their accounts include bizarre new details.
Many of the people who'd been there at the time spoke about a crash. Others went even further and said that bodies had been recovered. Little humanoid entities, but definitely extraterrestrial in origin.
What begins as a crashed weather balloon becomes a worldwide sensation as the rumors get more and more strange
People said that they saw 3 or more alien bodies that were found, and one of them could have still been alive. Several nurses, several people that said that they actually saw the bodies. Big head, almond-looking eyes. Various descriptions about what they looked like.
The whole UFO community began to concentrate on this case, saying it's the Holy Grail. This is the one case that could blow this mystery wide open.
For years, ufologists pressed the US military for answers. Finally, in 1997, the United States Air Force holds a press conference to explain the rumors of alien bodies.
This will be the final word on the Roswell incident. The conclusion of the first report left no doubt that what was recovered near Roswell, New Mexico was debris from a formerly top-secret Army Air Forces research project, an attempt to acoustically detect Soviet nuclear blast and ballistic missile launches. Bodies observed were probably test dummies for scientific research.
But some question if the crash test dummies correctly explain the alleged bodies.
Colonel, how do you square the UFO enthusiasts saying that they're talking about 1947, but you're talking about dummies used in the 50s, almost a decade later?
Well, I'm afraid that's a problem that we have with time compression. But I think if you find that people talk about things over a period of time, they begin to lose exactly when the date was.
Now, we know what Roswell was. It was a high-altitude surveillance balloon listening for acoustic signatures of nuclear explosions in the upper atmosphere by the Soviet Union. And, of course, they're not going to tell us that in the 1940s and 50s.
In the eastern United States, filmmaker Doug Trumbull is going to enormous lengths to find out if there's more to UFO legends than hot air.
There's a plane right there. There it is. That's probably at 35,000 feet. But you can see that.
To achieve his goal of capturing valid scientific data on UFOs, he's amassing an array of high-tech camera gear.
We have night vision cameras, which are image intensifiers that take every photon of light and magnify it several thousand times so that we can actually see in the dark, like the military does every day in Afghanistan.
Trumbull believes normal tracking equipment is not up to the task of following UFOs.
I hear all kinds of reports that UFOs behave in very weird ways. So they move in strange patterns, or they blink on and off, or they have weird colored lights. What you have to try to look for is something that's completely inexplicable. Something that doesn't fit any known parameters of light or trajectory or altitude, and it's behaving weirdly.
So he and his team have custom-built a tracking system capable of locking onto anomalous light sources.
If you put a camera like this on a tracking system, the tracking system knows where it's aimed, horizontally and vertically. That's exactly calibrated. If it's a light that's moving at some velocity that's unusual, faster than an airplane, that's worth tracking, and that's why this thing moves very fast. It can go and track something.
Trumbull believes his high-tech gear will let him gather important information about each unidentified object.
What you want to be able to do by locking onto an object and being able to triangulate is to be able to exactly calculate its altitude, its speed, its trajectory, and its movement in a way that no aircraft could do.
But he realizes that chances are low that a UFO might come to him.
I need to go to some place that had the highest likelihood of something unusual happening in the sky.
So Trumbull decides to customize a military-grade Humvee to transport his gear to ideal viewing locations.
Getting to some of these high-altitude locations for observing spots was pretty treacherous. So that's why I commissioned the Humvee. The ambulance back was the biggest box I could get on the back that I could use as a control room. And then we built these doors in the roof and the ability to raise a telescope out of the roof and carry all that stuff on board and be able to go to any site and turn it on and be up and running in minutes.
With the vehicle built, the team is now ready to launch its search mission. While most people think Trumbull will never find evidence of UFOs, others believe that we've already been visited by extraterrestrial life. One claimed encounter occurred in England, less than 150 kilometers northeast of London in Rendlesham Forest. It's an event that's become known as Britain's Roswell. Like Roswell, the Rendlesham sighting is reported near an American military base. But in this case, witnesses claim to have had a much closer encounter. It starts in the early hours of December 26, 1980, when two groups of servicemen go out to investigate a strange light.
They see a strange triangular-shaped craft. It looks as if it's either on 3 legs or hovering. It's about the size of a sports car. It's like nothing that they've ever seen before. Two of the military officers who got close enough to sketch this thing and to even touch the side of it.
In the 1990s, investigator Nick Pope led a cold case investigation of the Rendlesham sighting.
After a few minutes, the UFO begins to lift slowly off the ground and slowly maneuver its way through the trees at the edge of the clearing. And then, as it rises above the level of the trees, they see it shoot away to the horizon at immense speed. To them, this was not lights in the sky. This is a UFO up close and personal.
The next night, the UFO allegedly returns to the forest and is witnessed by another group of servicemen, including Deputy Camp Commander U.S. Army Colonel Charles Holt.
We came out of the forest back here pursuing the object. The object had come out from the forest after traveling through the trees. We came out here, stopped out there in that farmer's field, and sort of hovered 4, 5, 6 feet off the ground, and just sat there glowing and pulsing. We watched it for maybe a minute or two, and all of a sudden the object went poof, and exploded silently into 5 white objects, and they immediately disappeared.
The light is gone now.
Then suddenly, another UFO appears.
Is it back again? Yes, sir. There it is again.
We noticed an object to the south displaying bright colors, and they changed shape. It came toward us at high speed, and that's well documented on the tape.
It's a strange, small red light. You'll see maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out.
Holt describes the UFO moving rapidly across the sky, as if performing a grid search.
There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir.
Silently stopped and sent on some type of a beam that I can best equate to a laser, and then abruptly disappeared. We stood there in awe, wondering what had happened, thinking, is this a warning? Is this a weapon? What is it? We were just so shocked and surprised by it. It was just overwhelming.
U.S. Air Force Colonel Charles Holt submits his report to the British Defense Ministry detailing the alleged UFO sighting at Rendlesham. While the military gathers evidence at the site, the story hits the press, and multiple theories arise to explain the incident.
As soon as you hear this, with any UFO cases, you have this streaking light and it lands just over there, you've probably got the old meteor phenomenon. In fact, there was a meteor over southern England at that time.
Another theory points to a more earthly explanation.
Sometime after the event, a local forester put forward the theory that the witnesses might have seen the light from the Orford Ness lighthouse shining mysteriously through the trees, and that might explain the UFO sighting.
Strange, small red light.
He's looking in a particular area, and he's saying, there's a light, and then there's a pause. And that pause is an interval of 5 seconds, and that is exactly the interval of the Orford Lighthouse.
Holt insists he was well aware of the location of the lighthouse.
The lighthouse is over there, about 30 degrees off from where I'm standing in a small notch in the hill. At that time, you could see the lighthouse because the trees had not grown up as much as they are now.
There's no way that the lighthouse could explain all the different things that have been reported. Here you've got a senior military officer with an incredibly high security clearance, a track record of military service for his country. This guy, in terms of witnesses, is as good as you can get.
Other witnesses at the site report seeing unusual burn marks on trees and indentations in the ground where the alleged UFO landed. But skeptics argue there are more reasonable explanations for these findings.
Burn marks on the pine trees were blazes with an axe and were oozing rosin. The landing marks were rabbit diggings.
Holt and his servicemen also test the area for any unusual radiation levels.
We got very positive readings, 7 units, that's calling on a 0.5 scale.
Those radiation readings were sent to the Defense Intelligence staff, and they were about 7 to 8 times higher than what they would have expected to see in that area.
But radiation experts dispute Pope's findings and say the equipment and readings did not reveal anything unexpected.
The background radiation was the use of poor equipment that wasn't intended to measure what was being measured. All of this was a comedy of errors. There is no credible evidence that a flying saucer landed in Rendlesham Forest.
The British Defense Ministry dismisses the case as cause unknown, saying the event was never a threat to national security and warrants no further investigation. While the Rendlesham incident remains a mystery, Colonel Holt is not the only U.S. military officer who reports coming face-to-face with a UFO. Off the southern coast of the United States, a veteran pilot reports a head-to-head, mid-air showdown with a flying object he can't explain. Larry Jividan, a decorated Vietnam veteran with the United States Marine Corps and retired commercial airline pilot, waited nearly 4 decades to reveal his close encounter.
Most pilots generally keep sightings like this to themselves and among their crew.
Twilight, February 6, 1975. Jividan takes off from the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. He's captain of a training flight with 5 other pilots on board.
That night was very smooth at 33,000 feet, which was our cruising altitude for the training flight. Sky above us was very clear.
A quiet flight until just before landing.
The approach back into the Naval Air Station at Pensacola, the student in the right seat of the airplane spotted a red light off at the 1 o'clock position pacing our airplane. The terminology he used was, "Sir, we have traffic at 1 o'clock." And I looked, yep, there he is. It was clearly a red object, totally round with sharply defined edges, was not pulsating, was solid.
Jividan reportedly contacts the air traffic controller to ask if other aircraft are in the area.
He said, "You are the only airplane up there tonight on my scope."
He requests permission to approach the object.
The radar controller cleared me to do what I wanted, and the terminology they use is cleared as requested.
So he maneuvers his plane to investigate the craft.
So as I turned towards the red light suddenly moved at a very high rate of speed. It made a longitudinal move, not like an airplane moves. At that point, I knew that we were not dealing with an airplane. I really didn't know what we were dealing with.
Jividan says he was flying close to maximum airspeed.
We both were doing about 6 to 7 miles a minute. As I sped up, the object would speed up, and it definitely was an airborne object as I dove below it to look up at the star field and see it tracking and blocking out stars as it moved along.
He remembers the object lingering for 30 seconds before disappearing.
There was no visible signs of propulsion. It just left and was over the horizon within seconds.
And he recalls the encounter lasted less than 5 minutes.
In the 36 years I flew and roughly 19,000 hours of flying, I've never seen anything like this before or since.
Jividan's in-flight encounter with a UFO is rare, but thousands have reported seeing strange flying objects from the ground. Deciphering these unexplainable flying objects is the mission of filmmaker Doug Trumbull. And after 15 years in the making, his first mobile UFO expedition begins.
This is the very first time we've ever actually integrated the whole system of the telescope, the cameras, and all of the systems on board this Humvee. As soon as I get some signals from these cameras, they'll be coming up a wide field camera here, and then the narrow field camera here. These are both going to be night vision cameras.
Trumbull's UFO hunting gear is now up and running.
Anything that moves in the sky, we should be able to see.
He and his team must wait until nightfall to survey the skies for signs of extraterrestrial life.
Most of the activity happens at like 3 or 4 in the morning. There are very few people up at that point of time. And so I've heard reports that that's the highest level of aerial activity that you might see.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna go over and see if I can get a shot of the sky with stars.
First, they test the standalone wide-angle lens camera aimed straight up.
This is the all-sky camera. There's a fisheye up here, super high-sensitivity CCD camera. It's downloading into this computer. Okay, that's a 3-second exposure.
Then Trumbull puts his telescopic cameras and tracking system through their paces.
Oh, I'm trying to calibrate the whole thing. I can aim one of my telescopes at the sky and see hundreds of satellites. And while I'm looking at satellites going by, I can see all the stars and all the constellations. And I can also see hundreds of meteorites just flying through the shot all the time, like fireflies. And it's stuff that's invisible to our naked eye.
His tracking gear quickly pinpoints a perfect test subject, a high-flying plane in the night sky.
See all 4 engines. Strobe lights, wingtip lights. Big bright star goes by. We are seeing a little bit of contrail off the engines. It's really tracking very smoothly.
Before the test's complete, he spots a flying object he can't identify.
Oh, that really weird ball of light.
Two of them in the frame at once. Holy sh! That's great. We just lucked out.
UFO hunter Doug Trumbull spots a strange ball of light. It could be what he's searching for.
Oh, that's a really weird thing. Kind of green, blue, soft ball of light. Just looks really weird. It's not going anywhere.
As the tracking system locks onto it, he tries to figure out if it's a UFO.
Okay, Doug, we've got an object. 270 north, 67 up. Okay. Got it.
A lot of atmospheric disturbance. I'm not going to make anything out of it yet.
Yeah, there's some atmosphere coming in, Doug.
You know, sometimes you can't.
But it soon becomes obvious that the unusual light is not a UFO. It's It's a common satellite.
Another satellite.
Tonight, Trumbull is unsuccessful in capturing real evidence of alien life, but he remains committed to continue his search for UFOs, and he believes that more needs to be done to find out if extraterrestrial life exists.
What we need is 10 or 100 or 1,000 very inexpensive trackers that are just gathering a lot of data all across the country or all around the world. Looking at the sky automatically, day and night, that should all come into a central data processing center.
If there are otherworldly beings out there, Trumbull is determined to find them.
The ultimate goal for me is I'd like to know, is there life in the universe? And where do we as human beings fit into the cosmic web of life? You know, that's the big question.
While scientists and ufologists debate claims that aliens have visited Earth, Trumbull is not the only one who believes that the sheer size of the universe makes it likely that we are not alone.
As an astronomer, I find it incredibly plausible, if not inevitable, that there's life in the universe everywhere.
Scientists have created a mathematical formula called Drake's equation to calculate the probability of finding other advanced civilizations in our galaxy.
The final number that comes out of Drake's equation is how many advanced civilizations exist today. Unfortunately, although we understand the astronomical factors really well, the biological factors that lead to intelligent civilizations is mostly guesswork based on only Earth as the example. And so that's why there can be one civilization in the Milky Way, which is us, or there could be thousands. We don't really know how to get at the right estimate.
Skeptics say that even if there is intelligent life somewhere in the universe, the chances of aliens actually visiting Earth are close to zero. They argue that the distances are too far, the journey too long.
You could go from here to the nearest star at the speed of the Voyager spacecraft, and it would take you 70,000 years to get there. That's a long time to sit there with your tray table and your seat back down.
Even if you are an advanced civilization, I don't care how advanced you are, you still have to play by the rules of physics in terms of light travel time and speed through space. That's a fundamental hurdle that all intelligent civilizations have to surmount. And space travel is the most awkward way of doing that.
But many believers still claim that some form of alien life has visited Earth.
It's very easy to have an opinion and blow off something that is extraordinary if you haven't seen it yourself.
But I really believe that what we saw was an alien spacecraft. I have no idea why it decided to fly over my state, but it sure created a lot of excitement.
I've always said I don't know what these things are, but I know that they are.
If anybody wants to ridicule me now because of what I've said, then fine, have at it. But I have the confidence in knowing what I saw.
It changes your life forever. It changed me forever. And your outlook on the world and your worldview is changed forever. You want to know what it is.
But skeptics are not convinced.
I want some proof, and I'm one of these people that has to have proof in hand.
Is there life out there? Definitely. Are we being visited? I don't know. But so long as some UFO sightings for objects behaving in ways that we can't replicate, I mean, in terms of speeds and maneuvers, it's worth considering the link.
I think people want to believe in UFOs and aliens because it gives us a sense that we're not alone. So what do we have? We have each other, and that's good enough.
As the debate rages on, men like Doug Trumbull continue to search the skies for evidence that we are not alone.
I'm just on a path that I do want to know very, very much, and I'd like to have evidence that I could say, they're here. I'd like to know that. That's the biggest news that we're ever going to get.